Game over. It is game over.
Game over, cancer.
I'm Val Solomon, Director of Program Impact at Cannonball Kids Cancer Foundation.
And I'm Dana Nichols, Executive Director of CKC.
Game Over, Cancer, a podcast dedicated to exploring conversations about pediatric cancer research, solutions, and inspiring family stories.
We're a nonprofit dedicated to creating innovative treatment options for kids fighting cancer and educating for change.
By creating a space for these conversations, we empower the community to take action and provide tangible hope. Today's episode is all about how collaboration pulls us together to go more forward than we could possibly go individually. And we are speaking with somebody who has become a driving force in doing just that and advancing research in DIPG and also DMG, working not only to honor her own child, but to create a legacy for all children facing this disease.
This is a beautiful example of how we can come together for our own children, but for all children. And I love speaking with Tammi today to be able to hear how much further we can go together.
Yeah, I mean, to say we're touched by this conversation is an understatement. She is so strong and doing so much and able to not only pull her own folks together and come together with volunteers and staff and like lead a whole team that's doing such important work, but also to leave space for collaboration with other foundations, other families. I mean, it's so touching, and I know that you'll enjoy it.
Absolutely. Take a listen. She's a mom to 3 boys, CJ, Tommy, and Chad Carr. Chad was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor called diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma, DIPG, on September 23, 2014, at just 3 years old. He was treated with 30 rounds of radiation at Mott Children's Hospital and then participated in a clinical trial at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York. He bravely fought for 14 months before gaining his angel wings on November 23, 2015. She is the co-founder, ChadTough's Defeat DIPG Foundation, and their mission is to fight for a cure for DIPG and DMG. Please welcome Tammi Carr.
Thank you so much for joining, Tammi.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I guess, let's start with the inspiration for the foundation. Tell us a little bit about Chad.
Oh, goodness. Chad was a special little boy. He was hysterical. He had a great sense of humor. He had an eclectic taste in food. He loved his brothers and his dog more than anything. I'll say that during his entire fight, he never complained. He just went with the flow. He'd ask us little questions here and there, but really never complained. He was a rascal. He loved to, we have a kind of a Michigan deep family, and he would make little jokes about how he liked Michigan State and Ohio State.
He liked to poke the bear.
Oh yeah, he liked to push the buttons. He was, he was always a jokester and just a ton of fun and a beautiful, beautiful little boy.
We're so glad to hear about him.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
He was special.
And so tell us a little bit about, we kind of went through in your introduction, a little bit about the journey for his treatment. And I kind of want to fast forward a little bit because the reason I thought this would be a great conversation for us to have, not only to kind of shine a light on the inspiration behind your organization, but I know how strongly you all feel about collaboration. And, I think that's something that at CKC and ChadTough, we all have in common, which is we don't care who funds the cure as long as it gets funded and as long as it gets found. So tell us a little bit about maybe starting the foundation in his honor.
Yeah, I think that when things started, it really started as I woke up the morning after Chad was diagnosed. And I said to my husband, I just had this gut feeling, we need to get this out there. We need people praying for Chad. That's really how it started. And he's a pretty private person. And but he knows how I am. And he was like, do what you got to do. And I really just started sharing what Chad was going through, what this was. I wanted everyone to hear about this. You know, I had never heard about DIPG.
Right.
Like, how could Neil Armstrong's daughter be diagnosed with this 60 years earlier, nothing having changed, and
Right.
Chad receiving the
Yes.
exact same protocol? Like, I'm like, this is just not, this doesn't make sense. We put him on the moon.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
what are we doing here? And so I was like, we have to keep like people caring about this. So really was sharing the journey, which was therapeutic for me during the fight as well. And then really, as far as like, the foundation sort of started while Chad was in the fight because people were like, I want to help. Here's money. Here's money. And I'm like, oh gosh, that was not really my original intent. But then we realized how little funding there really was for this.
Right.
And so unfortunately, you know, Chad passed away 14 months after his diagnosis. And I remember saying to my father-in-law and my husband, like, if we could raise $500,000 a year for this disease, like what an incredible legacy for Chad and what a difference for this disease. Well, you know, that was a goal. And, you know, last year we raised over $8 million and
Wow.
that was never the intent, at least from our perspective. It was like, we're just going to do something. So, because if somebody had done something more 30 years ago, maybe Chad would be here.
Yeah.
Right.
And that really was the reasoning behind it. And I don't care. I tell people all the time, like, I don't care for the biggest foundation for DIPG. I don't care who cures it. Just like you said, this is not going to be solved within the walls of one institution. Like, we have to collaborate. This disease cannot take inefficiencies. It cannot take waste of money. So we have 45 family partners that work with us who have decided not to start their own foundations because why, right? We're all trying to do the same thing, which is cure this thing and put ourselves out of business. That's my ultimate goal.
I think it's so amazing and such a testament to just get started, do the first step, because I can imagine putting myself in your shoes and a goal of $500,000 a year sort of seems unfathomable back, like right when you're getting started. So to know that you have exponentially surpassed that for Chad and for every child at $8 million a year is incredible. And I think that idea of we're not going to go it alone is seems to me, if I had to guess, one thing that got you there quicker. Can you talk a little about having family, as you're calling them, family partners who are bought into this organization you've created?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there is no way that we would be in this position alone. Like that just, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
I really believe that we're stronger when we work together. And so I also don't think that everyone needs to have a foundation, right? I think if we can, let me tell you, I having a foundation is a lot of work. It's expensive. There's a lot of things that go into that are difficult.
Yeah.
And really, when you lose your child, the first thing is you just don't want people to forget him or her, right? Like, you want them to have that legacy. You don't want people to stop saying their name. So by us having family partners who have all lost their kids, and we say their names, we talk about their milestones. This is not just about Chad and Michael anymore. It's about all of these kids. And that's the way it should be, right? Like, we want these families to feel like this is much their foundation as it is ours. We have research foundation partners as well. So different foundations who they do have their own foundations, but they say, you guys do DIPG really well. So when we want to do something in the DIPG space. So they fund with us. So we've got a lot of different ways that we collaborate. And we won't work with institutions if they won't collaborate and won't share. We're not doing that. Like, I don't care about your silos. I don't care about your bureaucracy. Like, I care about finding a cure, and that's not going to happen if we don't work together.
Yeah, 100%. We talk a lot about that just from, like a nonprofit nerd perspective, right? Like, there's so much administration that goes into forming your own foundation, as you well know, right? That the last thing kind of that someone who has just been through what is probably the most traumatic experience a person can go through needs to do is to take on this, building a business essentially is what it is.
It is.
And what a gift it could be for a family that wants to help remember their child and that wants to have a legacy after their passing, to know that somebody's already taking care of the paperwork, right? And I can do the thing that really connects me to my child.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, we talk about it a whole lot, and I see it on your website. I see it in your messaging, how well you all do that. And so we really wanted to take a moment and just kind of highlight that. It's really, it's kind of what we all see as like, you know, officially it's like not having redundancy, right? Like we don't have time to be replicating each other's work. Why not collaborate? Mm-hmm. But it's easier
right,
said
that's the
as
thing.
a concept
the
for
concept
some people.
works.
Right, yeah.
Concept super easy to agree on, but in practice, very difficult. And you're talking about families who have lost someone so dear to them. This is all so high stakes. Mm-hmm. But then
It is.
Yeah,
and
but you're doing it.
Too.
I wondered if you could talk a little bit about even joining, you've named them for a second, but there's a partner family that came in, 2 organizations that became ChadTough. So the Mosier family, could you talk a little bit more to that? Because I think that even is
Definitely.
probably your solid ground to bring in 40 more family partners.
Right. No question. The Mosier family had the Michael Mosier Defeat DIPG Foundation, and they are in the Maryland area. And we had funded, Chad and Michael were diagnosed at the same time. We kind of went through the journey at the same time. Jason and I had gotten to know Mark and Jenny Mosier, like-minded individuals. We got along really well. We had our separate organizations, but we decided that we'd fund together, because they had a scientific advisory council. We weren't scientists. They weren't scientists. Like, who are we to say what the best research is, right?
We hear it. We hear you.
Yeah. So we started collaborating with them initially and co-funding. Well, then COVID hits, and I will say, like, we had started earlier than they had, as far as I realized early on, initially it was me and volunteers, and me and my husband and volunteers around a kitchen table, right? And things kept growing, and I realized that this was not a sustainable model if we wanted this to be a long-term endeavor. It's great to think about everything being run with volunteers, but this is a very emotional thing too for a family to go through. And I did not want everything on my shoulders. Mm-hmm. Like, I wanted to be able to participate and do the things I'm good at and the things that made me feel good about honoring Chad. But everything, I didn't want that. So we had already kind of engaged. I had forced some of our volunteers, honestly, to like, okay, we need you to get on board with us, like, officially. And they were like, no, we don't want to take your money. And I'm like, this is not about that. It's about, there needs to be some accountability, and it needs to feel like a real job if we're going to keep this happening long term. Yeah. So, our executive director, our CEO, she was one of our first volunteers. Mm-hmm. Our director of operations, one of our first volunteers. And we have an incredible team. But the Mosiers, it had really just been Jenny doing everything with volunteers still. So when COVID hit, it stopped, right? And she hadn't stopped since Michael died. Mm-hmm. And I think it was like this, oh my gosh, I can't do this again. Like, I can't start this up again, right? You're just going, because when your child dies initially, you're just like diving into anything to keep your mind distracted. Right. And like, that's what I did. And that's what she did. And when she took a moment to pause, she was like, I can't do this. And they did not have the infrastructure created. So she came to me and said, like, I don't know what to do here, because either we have to fold or we got to merge with you or something, because I can't do this again. And I was like, well, you're not folding, because you're too important to this disease and you've done too much good. And so let's figure it out. And we did an actual merger, which was like it was a in-depth, difficult thing. You talk about all that administrative stuff, like, it was serious. Yeah. But I will say you're right. Like, we would never be where we are today without that merger, without that collaboration. They had a model where they had a few families. They had them as chapters, and we had a couple family partners. And so when we came together, we came to this idea of how we were going to do this moving forward. And it really, 1 + 1 really has equaled 3. And there's no question that without that initial collaboration between our two families, I don't think there's any way we'd be where we are today.
Yeah. And a lot of what you're speaking to sounds very similar to what our founder, Melissa and Michael Wiggins, experienced in starting up. I mean, they started Cannonball in honor of Cannon while he was still in treatment. And it was started to just grow from an online presence, because rather than tell 50 people what's going on 50 separate times, it's here's my update. And so just having a following and people wanting to give back. But then also, yes, there was a point where, this is a family that is in the middle of a cancer fight, and they have lots of things going on. And now running a business, now running this foundation is its own doing good but monster, or that you have to, that you have, and it's hungry, you have to feed it and you have to keep going. And I mean, same thing, she was just like, we have to move into, we're either going to be a nonprofit that's going to be the long haul and we got to start hiring people, or what else. But there does come a point where it's like it just gets too big, and thank gosh, right? Like, that's great, but then what is the next step? And I think what's really cool in that story and in what you're sharing is that I never got the sense, in fact, I was told straight out by our founders, this is more than just Cannon. Like, he is not the point of this. He's the inspiration behind, but he is not the end of this this organization. That's not why he exists. It's the other kids too. And I know your organization clearly has room for all stories and all children that want to participate and come alongside you. And I wonder how as a parent that grew for you from I'm doing this for Chad to I'm doing this for everybody, and everybody else is welcome too.
Yeah, I that was an evolution, right? Because when you start this, originally it was just, I want to honor my son, right? And I want to make a difference, but I want him to be remembered. Yeah. And as things continued to grow, and, then we merged with the Mosiers, and neither of us, I think, had this intention of this large monster of an organization, right? Like this big business, but that is what it's become. But there was a need for it, right? That's why I'm not going to say that the work has been easy, because it's not easy work, but it also hasn't been twisting arms as much as you think. There are a lot of need around this disease, and I think we've filled this gap that people were really searching for. And once we realized that, like, we had the infrastructure put together, that was scary, right? Things like, oh my gosh, I remember in this board meeting, we had a new board member join right at the beginning, right? It was my father-in-law, my husband, and I, and then we added this board member as a lawyer, and I had a panic attack. I was like, what is happening here? Like, this was not what my plan was.
Right.
It was scary. And then, but over time, I released that, and I realized that, this is going to be Chad's legacy. This is going to be Michael's legacy. But like, it's so much bigger than them. Like a cure, they're going to be a huge part of that when it happens, right? But like, giving these other families the platform to do the same thing while not having to go through the other pieces that we did, which, the word nonprofit irritates me even, because people think, okay, well, you shouldn't pay anyone and it should all be, that's great, but it is not sustainable long-term if you're going to do it at a big level, right? Yeah. And when you're funding, if you're, $6 million in research a year, like, that's a lot. You can't depend on that with all volunteers. Now, I am a stickler, and I am the cheapest person you will ever meet. Like, I am, if you don't want to work with me philanthropically, you're not working. Like, I don't waste money. Like, our team knows that. Like, that is not happening. I don't throw parties to just have a party. Like, no. But, you do have to spend money to raise money. 100%. And, if to do it long term. Right. And so, I think it was an evolution for me to get there, to like let go of that and like be okay with us getting bigger, because that was not the initial plan, at least not mine, but it was God's plan. That's what I truly believe.
we make a joke when we talk about how nonprofit folks are so resourceful. Like, we all know which businesses have the best free giveaway pens, because that's what all of our offices are stocked with.
Yes.
Yep, you're not wasting money, that's for sure.
We have perfectly good pens back at the office.
We do. One thing I think we're excited about is when we look at what you're doing, we've kind of funded in some of the same spaces, obviously you to such a larger degree than where we've dipped our toes in at DIPG. So I wondered, what is exciting coming out of the research that you're seeing? What's good? And then we're going to have to flip it to like, what's keeping you up at night scary?
Yeah, the best thing ever just came out. The first FDA approved drug for DIPG was just approved last week. That is a ginormous first step. And, there's been a lot happening over the last 10 years, but this is kind of the, what we've realized with these ultimately treatment plans and cures down the road is it starts somewhere, right? And then what do you layer on top of this? And then what do you layer on top of that? So we've got our foundation piece, right? This ONC201. That is hugely exciting. We've been investing in that, in research into the ONC201 drug for a long time. And just a huge thing for families to now at least you get your radiation and this is part of your treatment plan. And now it's going to allow the researchers to just do so much more on top of this. Like, what do we do with this drug to take that next step? So that has just been so exciting. And I've heard from so many people all over that are just like, wow, this is a big deal. So that is, I would say, a tremendous piece of news for the DIPG space.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back over my time at CKC and, the ways that I've been educated, the way that we have structured our messaging to help educate the public on what we mean when we are talking about pediatric cancer even, right? Because it's more than, one of the things that we spend some time in when we're, educating folks who are new to the space is it's not one disease. We talk about pediatric cancer like it's one, but, if you understand the impact that research can have, it's probably because you've heard some stats for some cancers that have way better stats than one like DIPG, right? Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about having an option, having another step where we're progressing in treating a disease that is so devastating, this is a huge, huge deal. Mm-hmm. Not that, any progress
not
we
the
make.
Magic pill.
It's not. It's not the magic pill, and not to diminish that. We're not trying in other spaces too. But when we're talking about the kids, we want people to picture who we're working for. Someone like Chad is exactly why not just why we're doing what we're doing, but why we're doing it so quickly. Like, why do we need to move?
Why does it matter?
Why do we
right
have a
now?
funding structure that makes sure that whatever we raise this year gets assigned this year and awarded, right? Like, why are we trying so hard to get the resources to the right people, but also as quickly as we can? It's because these kids can't wait.
Yeah.
No, they can't. They don't have the time.
They don't. Tell me what's keeping you up at night in DIPG aside from everything.
Yeah, a lot of things, but I think you want everything to happen faster, right? Like, I feel like there's so much more awareness around DIPG right now, and like we've come to realize that people talk about these rare cancers. Well, all pediatric cancer is rare, thank goodness. Thank goodness, right? Inside pediatric cancer, brain cancer is the leading cause of death in kids. And inside brain cancer, DIPG is 50% of the deaths every year. Like, that's significant. Yeah. But these kids, like, when you're diagnosed, yes, we have these great things that are happening right now, but like, how fast can we move things? Because we have the hope. This is hope, but like, it isn't going to happen tomorrow. And it is a lot of pressure to feel like, we're one of the largest funders for this disease. Like, we can't stop. We can't slow down. Like, and things happening with, cuts to the NIH funding in pediatrics. I mean, that is a huge scary thing. We're not the NIH. We can't be the NIH.
Right.
So I have a fear, of labs that we've invested in shutting down, of, DIPG not being important enough for those grants. Like, those are really scary things right now. And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you sit on, because they are happening, period. Like, that is happening. And I think that's probably the thing that scares me the most.
Yeah. I mean, that's what keeps us up at night too. We're going to have an episode come out here sometime soon. We've been reviewing the response from the National Cancer Institute, like dictating how they're going to be allocating funds within that 2026 presidential budget, and it's a 37% cut to the cancer research.
And that's all cancer.
That's all cancer.
Where we're already
which we were getting like how little before.
Yeah.
Like, how much more
4% of what's allocated for cancer research in our country is dedicated to all pediatric cancers.
All cancers.
That's for that pot. So everything is getting cut, and the impact is it's cut for right now. We're talking about cuts for one budget, but the ripple effect of that is going to last for a long time. And I think, in terms of what we are concerned about, not just, short-term goals of what we'd like to do and who we'd like to fund and things we'd like to see, it's, just as much the bigger question of, like, where's that money? How we can't replace that. How could we replace that? That's the largest funder of pediatric cancer research in the world, taking a 37% cut. And, it's the reason why we all have to work together in, what we do. But I mean, I think people need to understand the reality of what's happening. This is bad.
This is. There's no way around it. I mean, it is. Like, pediatrics doesn't get enough money before the cuts. And in a world like DIPG, there's so much momentum right now. Like, there's so much of this upswing, and so it's the worst timing. It's the worst timing.
Yeah.
So.
I know for me, I always say the hardest part of understanding cuts and the screeching halt of momentum is that families like yours who go through this right now know that they're doing it for future, not for them.
Okay.
That they're doing that, and to know that any child who has gone on to a trial and gone through this so that something comes out for someone else later, and for that to stop and it not have a meaning in the way it should, is so devastating. And I think that's what people don't understand. It's just so disrespectful to everyone who has fought this fight.
There's no question. I mean, when we made this thing official here, I mean, we knew that what we were doing, we had come to the realization it wasn't going to help Chad. When we first started, it was, let's go. Like, he's not going to be one of the ones, right? Like, at some point we realized that was not miracle. That was not the miracle we were going to get. But what's happened with this foundation is our miracle, because it's incredible, right? And you're right. Like, we've all worked so hard, and like, to see this happening right now, and for these kids who come next, it's devastating. It's truly devastating. So I think maybe in some ways it'll inspire more people personally to give, because if they realize that this isn't some storyline, like, this is for real, right? Like, this is really happening. And so, maybe some of that slack can be picked up, but I mean, we can't be the NIH.
Right. Well, so where do we go from here, right? CKC does fund a little bit of research in this space, but ChadTough is where a lot of people can do a lot of good. So let us know, if you wouldn't mind sharing with our listeners, how people can find out more about what you're up to and how they can get plugged in with what kind of initiatives you have going on, so that if they hear this and they feel moved to make a difference, they know how to contact you and your organization.
Perfect. ChadTough.org. It's that easy.
That is
You'll
easy.
get our newsletters that come out and stay in the know. And, you'll hear all about all of our kids that, who we're fighting for us. You'll hear about the kids that are in the fight right now and those angels that are on our team. So, we've got an incredible team of staff too, that they're the heart of this organization, along with, my husband and I and the Mosiers. They're in it for the right reasons, and they're incredible. So they'll make sure everybody's kept abreast of everything happening.
We love that. Well, the reason ChadTough exists, the reason CKC invests in innovative research is to create treatment options for brain cancers for kids like Chad. So if you want to support the research, you can make a gift on ChadTough.org. You can also make a gift at cannonballkidscancer.org, and we will continue this fight no matter what. So thank you for listening.
Absolutely. We do want to thank you for listening to Game Over Cancer. If there's something that, you have a question and we didn't ask it, you can always ask it in our comments, and, we can respond and keep the conversation rolling. We don't have to stop here. We need to keep people thinking and talking about ways that we can do better by kids with brain and with brain tumors.
Absolutely. So thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you joining us and making a commitment to our fight. Until next time, I'm Dana Nichols.
I'm Val Solomon.
And we will CK see you later.
Join us as we transform fear into courage and turn adversity into opportunities for change.
If you want to be involved in the conversations that create change in the world of pediatric cancer, take a moment, share, like, and subscribe.